Good afternoon. My name is Arielle Johnson. I am the Senior Policy Advisor of the Illinois Department of Central Management Services. We are so excited to have you here with us today as we celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. A little bit about the Illinois Department of Central Management Services and the Business Enterprise Program, which will be highlighting some amazing work today done by one of our BEP council members, but also other team members here who work and push forward for equity and inclusion across the state of Illinois. So the Business Enterprise Program, it works to promote procurement diversity amongst businesses owned by minorities, women, and persons with disabilities. In addition to the Business Enterprise Program, CMS also manages statewide personnel. And so ensuring that our workforce is reflective of the residents that we serve across the state of Illinois. Many other things that we do at CMS, and we won't talk about that today, but you can absolutely go to our website or our LinkedIn page to learn about all of the great things that we work on within CMS. Today, we are going to celebrate and learn for Indigenous Peoples Day as we celebrate and honor the Native American peoples and commemorate their histories and cultures. We have some great guests here with us today who will educate us on several topics, but also in regards to work that is being done to make sure that the state of Illinois is inclusive and a place where you can come for opportunity and engagement. And so I am going to introduce today Dr. Sekile Nzinga from Governor Pritzker's office. And we're so grateful to have you here with us today. And I will let you take it away to bring your greetings.
Thank you so much, Arielle. I am delighted to be here, and my office is very new in the governor's office, and so we are in that building phase. And so being part of things like this and learning from my peers and my colleagues like Andrew is really exciting. We are entitled the Office of Equity, and we were established on July 30th of this year under executive order. And so this is a very exciting momentum that we now have in governor's offices where we are establishing offices of equity. Our office is kind of committed to three broad strategic areas, and that is to build an infrastructure for diversity, equity, and inclusion and access here in the state of Illinois through our state agencies, systems, to also serve as a thought partner with others committed to equity across the state, including our elected officials and the governor and here in the governor's office, and also to be engaged in our community who inform and guide and remind us, of our commitments to the people of Illinois. And so, what I often say is we are committed to making Illinois better for those of us, for everyone, no matter what zip code or what body that you live in. And so I'm committed to that venture before coming to the office, and now I'm energized now that I am in the office. This continues my work. I'm so excited to be here and to learn from you from today's conversation. And I'm going to use not take up much time, and I'm going to hand it back off to you, Arielle, or should I toss it to Patricia?
Actually, yes, we will pass it over to our CMS Deputy Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Patricia. I will let her introduce herself and all of the amazing things she's been working on.
Thank you so much, Arielle, and thank you to amazing panelists and special guests today for the opportunity to share the space to learn and to collaborate and to bring others into this very important conversation. So yes, Patricia Santoyo-Marin, I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I have the privilege of serving at a capacity where we provide access for prospective applicants to serve at the state of Illinois. And through this lens of diversity and inclusion, we partner with our special guests today in efforts to document and promote outreach, equitable outreach, so that we are representing the beautiful diversity we have within the state of Illinois in our workforce as we aim with this collaborative goal, right, for, as was mentioned, for regardless of zip code and body that we live in, so that we can bring ourselves into the workforce. So very excited to be here, and I'll certainly be taking notes as well.
Yes, we're really excited. And so without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get right into our presentation. We will be learning from Mr. Andrew Johnson. He is the Executive Director of the Native American Chamber of Commerce, Illinois. I usually call him Member Johnson because he is also a council member for the Business Enterprise Program Council, and very much engaged and supportive and encouraging the inclusion of tribal businesses and Native American-owned businesses. He also serves as the chair of our Employment Plan Council at CMS, and so just very much engaged and serving as a leader and a partner to the state of Illinois. And so we are very grateful to have you here with us today, Member Johnson, and we will pass it over to you, and I will also be taking notes. So thank you again, and welcome.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Arielle. I'm going to be a little more informal, if you don't mind, with everyone. That it's has been great working with you and with everyone at the state. It has been a wonderful journey and really just the beginning. And I think we'll get into some of the history here of Illinois itself and its impact on Indian country. But so glad to be a part of this. Happy Indigenous Day, people. Happy Indigenous Peoples Day to everyone. And so I look forward to sharing a lot of our history, our experiences, and our aspirations here within the state. You know, again, this is a presentation on some history, Illinois itself, and presented on behalf of the Native American Chamber of Commerce here in Illinois. We advocate, mentor, educate, and connect Natives within our state. Natives, in many respects, are born entrepreneurs. If you look at our history, trading practices, patterns, it was something that has existed throughout. And so there's some contact information down there if you would like to follow up with me at any point in time. So would love to talk with you. Today, what we want to do is really celebrate American Indian and Alaska Native voices here in Illinois. And we'll go into some of that other detail too, but really would like to start out with our land acknowledgement. So at our gathering today, we acknowledge the people and land upon which we meet. It is the location of the ancestral homes of the people of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Odawa, and Ho-Chunk. It is also the home of the Peoria, Kaskaskia, Piankasha, Wea, Miami, Mascoutin, Sac and Fox, Meskwaki, Kickapoo, and Chickasaw nations. We all have a responsibility to our Native nations, to recognize our Native nations and work with them as we move forward. Now, did you recognize every tribe mentioned in that acknowledgement? Probably not, because this is really a direct reflection of the genocide practiced against the indigenous people of this state. And as a result, Illinois is one of the few states without any federally recognized tribes or state recognized tribes, nor trust land. And within Indian country, we refer to reservations as trust land, because really that was what was established in the agreement with the federal government. So here's a map that really shows those states that do not have any federally recognized tribes. As you can see, it's pretty much east of the Mississippi. But our state is one of those key states in there. So we'll talk a little bit about our history, the disadvantaged entity, the historical trauma that many of us speak of. And as we look at Illinois itself, the last formal agreement between the Native people and the state and the government was the Treaty of Chicago in 1833. And this solidified the final removal of the original people here. And the state really had a limited native population until two federal acts were passed. One is called the Relocation Act, and the other one was referred to as termination. So these were back in the 1950s. And so what we saw with those, and the reason they were called that, so Relocation Act was looking at taking people and relocating them from the trust lands, from the reservations, into populated areas, into major metropolitan areas. So this occurred, both these acts occurred right after World War II. And if we recall that the end of World War II, that the atomic age began with the dropping of the bombs, and one needed different minerals and resources in order to support it. And lo and behold, where were many of those minerals and resources? Well, they were on reservation lands. And so the best way to get to them, it was determined, was to remove some of the people, relocate some of these people there to major metropolitan areas. So there was a very, very large effort, and there are many pictures out about this, about the terrific opportunities at these sites, at these cities, for education, for housing, for training, for jobs, all of those kinds of things. And the major areas were like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. Chicago was a very big one, New York and Denver. And so people would get on the bus or a mode of transportation and then go to these areas. And to be very honest, there were some who went voluntarily, and there were some who went involuntarily. The American Indian Center here in Chicago does have some members who did come out and followed the different peoples here. So what one had was that relocation. The next component was called the Termination Act, and that sought to abrogate and terminate all relations, all treaties with Native Americans. The tribes. Again, this was done at a time after World War II, and began in the Roosevelt-Truman administration, but was consummated under Eisenhower, where that termination occurred because with the war, there was tremendous debt that was incurred, and the U.S. was responsible for. So some of the minds went thinking, well, how can we reduce this debt? Well, let's abrogate these treaties, let's remove the obligations we have to the Native people, and we can save some of our monies that way. So what you had with relocation, prior to World War II, so in the 20s, 30s there, you had 80% of natives living on a reservation and about 20% living in an urban environment. And what we see today is that it's the exact opposite. There's almost 80% living in an urban environment and about 20% still living on the reservation. So with Illinois itself, we have a vibrant Native American population of about 100,000 statewide, and about 60,000 in the Chicagoland area, and about 40,000 within Chicago Metro itself. And we do represent over 125 tribes. People might even put that higher to over 150 tribes. But it was because of some of those acts there in the 50s that we have such a diverse population here of Native Americans. And as you can see, we're becoming more active in both the economic and political spheres. So all we are looking for, I mean, really, it's a proper recognition. We never address anything in terms of being victims, but we will be out there and we will be a part of this. And it's interesting too, because there are no federally recognized tribes nor trust land, that where non-issues in other states are somewhat issues here. And then if we look at treaties and nations, tribes and tribal governments, and what's termed an Alaska Native Corporation, and we'll get into that. The corporate term is very, very much a misnomer, but it was brought on after Alaska came into the United States in 1959, and it was a particular way to address the tribes up there. So treaties and tribal governments, that the tribal identity as a sovereign nation was defined by the Supreme Court under John Marshall in 1832. So this is why the different tribes do say they are sovereign. They have their own rules, constitutions, many of those things. But it ruled that the U.S. is legally bound to treat the tribes as nations and respect their rights and afford that protection which treaties stipulate. So, and in terms of treaties, that is the highest law of the land. Dealing with the U.S. government really was a nation-to-nation level through these treaties. And again, the highest law of the land is here with regard to that. And it's interesting because this is not reparations. This, again, it's a law, it's treaties between two sovereign governments. And when we talk about consideration in those legal terms, there was an exchange of land and resources for these different rights and privileges. And in almost every case, these were in terms of perpetuity. So that's why we continue to have these relationships and look to have the treaties upheld. We want to talk about a special relationship because American Indians are not a race or an ethnicity, but a nationality. Now, a race is a human population considered distinct based on physical characteristics. Ethnicity, a term which represents social groups with a shared history, sense of identity, geography, cultural roots, which occur despite the racial difference. But a nationality refers to a country of citizenship. And again, because the tribes were recognized as sovereign nations, that is why that term nationality is used. Let me talk about a couple of different things. I am an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation. And that status was provided to me by my particular tribe, or nation, the Cherokee Nation, and through the federal government. And the way this is obtained is really through ancestral records, and each tribe has their own particular way of how they determine who is a citizen or member of that tribe. But the two particular forms of identification and acknowledgement of this, one is called the CDIB card, the Certified Degree of Indian Blood. And this is where the federal government, this is through the Bureau of Indian Affairs, which is part of the Department of the Interior, does look at your records, your ancestral history, and provides a particular card that does give the degree or a quantum level. And then the second card is from your tribe itself, where they do indeed recognize you as a citizen. And for example, my grandmother, born and raised in around Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is Tahlequah, the capital of the Cherokee Nation, and that's where the Cherokees were removed to in the early 1800s. Because of the records that we have there in my particular family, I am considered a member of the Cherokee Nation and can show that particular lineage. And every single tribe is different in terms of who they determine to be citizens. Some of the tribes do have a blood quantum level, other tribes don't. There might be some other considerations that are brought into play. So it depends on that particular tribe. And at this time, there are 574 separate, distinct, federally recognized tribes. So if one might want to explore their history on our website, we have a downloadable document where you can work through that process. But one thing really must be noted, that the DNA is not an acceptable form of identification. It's wonderful that we can share a history, but in terms of recognition, it's just not being used by any of the tribes. So one really needs to, if you want to explore some more, one really needs to try to have an understanding of where your relatives, your ancestors might have lived and grown up, and then search within those tribes there. But many of them do have offices, outreach, to help individuals try to determine their ancestry and see if they are indeed a part of that particular tribe. So this special relationship, it's a recognized protected class because of the treaties and laws that are in place. And so you have tribes, but we also talk about the Alaska Native corporations, and this came about through the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act of 1971. So this was intended to settle land claims made by Alaska Natives and provide an economic development structure in the form of what are term corporations to create a path to economic sustainability. But rather than designating reservations held in trust by the US government, as the majority of tribes are down here in the lower 48, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act created 12 regional profit-making Alaska Native corporations and about 200 village group and urban corporations. But profit-making is a misnomer. These are terms used by the federal government that fit their particular needs, but does not necessarily reflect, it does not reflect the real status and tribal relationship that the different groups have. And this is just an example up in Alaska. So here are the different native lands that are there. That were set up, and actually just with working with the federal government, so the U.S. government designated ANCs as minority-owned and economically disadvantaged business enterprises. They are able to participate in some of the 8A designation with the federal governments there, and many times what they say. So it's profits with a purpose, but they're there to sustain the tribe itself. It's all for the social and economic well-being of all of the individuals there. So very different from that particular term of a business corporation. We want to thank the UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago, and the Institute for Research on Race and Public Policy, that they were able to publish in 2019 one of the first real documents of research about the state of racial justice for American Indian Chicagoans. So we can look at to some of those components. So we did talk about 80% of the natives live in an urban environment. And Chicago is one of those primary population centers, second largest east of the Mississippi and ninth largest in the entire nation. In terms of housing, half of Native Americans in Chicago are rent burdened and paying more than 30% of their income in rent. And evidence of the housing discrimination toward Native Americans who are twice as likely to be denied a home loan as whites after accounting for the gender of the applicant, et cetera, there. But tremendous issues around that. If we look at the natives in terms of education, less likely to have a college degree, and with wage increases associated, even those are lower for Native Americans for all other race groups within Chicago. In terms of economics, we have higher levels of unemployment, lower median household income than whites, and natives are paid 20% less than similarly positioned whites in Chicago. And this racial gap is similar to that of Black residents and larger than experience that of Latinx and Asian American residents. If we look at Illinois in terms of companies themselves, that there are approximately 3,800 companies that are indeed certified. So we're working with that total. But we want to look at, kind of a recap here. And again, we do not want to come off as a victim, but there is a lot of work that we need to do. So of those certified companies, African-American, about 1,200, 36.4%. Asian-American, 427, 12.6, Hispanic, 521, 15.4, Caucasian, 1179, so 34. But when we look at the Native population, and actually this number was revised since I gave this, we really have 8 certified companies within Illinois as minority. So we have a tremendous amount of work that we need to do and are seeking in many and all ways to become, to be more represented and serve our community here. One of the things that really does, I use the term, it hurts us because it comes to tremendous misunderstandings of the Native population and natives in general. And this is one part that I bring in, which I term the myth of Indian wealth, that there are people who actually think Indians pay no taxes, which is clearly wrong. I pay my taxes, and it's very interesting because actually I have been asked personally this particular question before, usually is accompanied by, how do I become Indian? But it's a complete falsehood out there. The Bureau of Indian Affairs and the federal government subsidizes all activities, and that is completely wrong. Yes, there is a Bureau of Indian Affairs. It functions in a trust capacity, but it deals primarily with the tribes themselves, and then the tribes act accordingly with their particular citizens there. But somehow the thought that the BIA it takes care of everything, provides funds for everything is simply wrong. The other is when it comes to gaming, that because of the casinos that are out there, every Indian is rich, everyone has a job, and everyone's driving a Cadillac or a Mercedes. And again, it is just a tremendous falsehood. It has provided avenues to sustain the tribes, some of the tribes, but have to say not every one of the tribes are able to take advantage of this. If you think about it just from a marketing standpoint, where do you have to be for a gaming institution? It's near a larger population, someplace easy to get to, those kinds of things. Many of the trust lands, many of the reservations aren't exactly geographically desirable for this, so it doesn't work for them at all. So it's where the tribes also work to what they do with their particular gains, and in every case, it does go back to help the tribe. We'll talk about a little bit about that too. Indians receive a monthly check from the government. Absolutely incorrect. There is nothing that comes in from a regular basis. So I'm still trying to find something like that if it's there, but it's absolutely wrong. And the idea that money just flows freely into Indian people's hands is just pure fantasy with that. Now, tribal governments and Alaska Native Corps utilize their funds to the benefit of their citizens. So really, you're looking at helping with the housing, the healthcare, the elder services, education, scholarships, vocational training, land and resource development, cultural retention, and improved infrastructure there. And with some of the tribes, and I have to say, particularly with mine, I can speak to the Cherokees themselves, that they look to apply this for many of the folks that live down in the in Tahlequah in the Oklahoma area, and the Cherokee lands there too. We're looking to hopefully improve some of that, but it's up to the tribe. But it all goes back to helping them, is for the general welfare of the tribe and its people and its members. That nobody is getting, no individual is getting rich off of this. It's all going back to the tribes. And then when we look to benefits that can help American Indians here in our state, with growing the businesses, with being certified as minority, it's all the same kinds of things. In particular, we want to have the role models out there. And build on that so that individuals growing here can see the people that have succeeded, what they do, and how they're doing it. And so in looking for some of this, you're not looking for anything different. It's just looking to do things that are consistent with what's done in Illinois. So as we look for tribes and Alaska Native ANCs to come in, we want them to know we're here, we're supporting them. We want them all to be a part, and we want to help them prosper here in our particular state. So that concludes this particular portion of it, but I hope it gives you a little bit of a background as to where we have been, where we are, and where we hope to go. And have to really appreciate and thank the partnership that we're developing here with many members of the state of Illinois. And I have to say that in every respect, it has been done with open arms, with a welcome, with where have you been? I'm so glad that you're here, that we can talk to you, that we can reach out. And so I have to thank all for where we are, what we're doing, and the wonderful future that we have to all work together and make it better for not only natives here in Illinois, but for all of our citizens too. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. This is really helpful and clarifying. I hope particularly folks who are engaged in diversity, equity, and inclusion and access work feel enlightened and informed and respectfully challenged to center American Indian and Native experiences within their work and their expertise as well, right? So I have a question for you that's actually about demographics and collecting data for demographics. In particular, my office is in the process of developing guidance that we can use statewide for statewide systems, but also state institutions, and being more expansive and more inclusive around data collection. And your section is a piece that I talk about all the time, the distinction between race, ethnicity, and indigeneity and sovereignty, and what like those it's important to make those distinctions around race, ethnicity, nation. And so in collecting data, usually Native American, American Indian are collapsed under race and ethnicity, and they ask you to kind of check what the box, either one box or even multiple boxes. What would be your recommendation for that? Would it be to ask what, if you are Native American, what nation you are connected to? How do you think would be the most meaningful way for the state of Illinois to collect demographic information? Yeah.
Yes, I think what you described would be perfect, and being Native American, and then put down which tribe that you or nation that you are a part of. It's very interesting, the definition for Native Americans, American Indians here in Illinois, because it includes all indigenous peoples of North, Central, and South America. But there is a distinct and special relationship for those individuals that are tribal members here in North America. And so we would really appreciate a recognition of that. And it helps us reach out to those individuals too, and allows them to be recognized and to recognize the tribe that they are associated with. So I think that would be a terrific idea with a box, but then an opportunity to identify the particular tribe that they're associated with.
Great. And then just a clarifying follow-up question. So I think it's inaccurate, and according to your presentation as well, it's inaccurate to list Native American or American Indian under the race and ethnicity category, because it continues to miseducate folks that it's a race and ethnicity and not a nation. And so do you suggest that we pull that completely out of that listing so that folks can now see that that's not a race and ethnicity, and just have that singular question, are you Native American, within the option to fill in which tribe, which nation you're affiliated with? Or do you still think it should be in the list, and then below a follow-up question with the designation? So I'm just curious about this, because I think leaving it in the list misinforms folks around nation, and but that's the way you historically see it in the list,
Mm-hmm. My goodness, I'm getting some goosebumps here hearing this, because that would be a wonderful, terrific thing to do, because we're actually encounter issues where natives are simply bundled under race or ethnicity, and not truly understanding that national component, that special recognition. And so that would be wonderful to do. So I support that 100%. Absolutely. And because it will actually affect us working with the state and with others, to have that kind of a designation, that kind of a recognition and understanding. So again, back to support that 100%.
Yeah, I appreciate that, your insight and your expertise, because I also think it does two things. It allows folks to name their experience here in within the U.S. borders, constructed U.S. borders, but it also educates others that this actually is a very distinct category beyond race and gender, and we've been miscategorizing a whole, many nations of people. And so I think there's a built-in education component when we disentangle it from race and gender, and that's the piece that I want to center Native Americans. So I want to start with that, but I also want to educate, others, and you can do that even within your demographic, the way that you ask demographic questions. So thanks for your insight on that. Yeah.
Absolutely. One other component around that is in terms of termed an enrolled member. As we were talking about, that the tribes designate who can or cannot be a citizen of their particular nation. And this is it's a difficult area because there is such an opportunity for abuse, if you can say that, because people have identified themselves that way and have no history or record of it, and have actually obtained multi-million-dollar contracts through different through different state governments and federal governments with that. But on the other side, it's a difficult area because some tribes do have a blood quantum level for recognition in their tribe. So you could have two people who are they're Indian, both their parents are Indian, but when they get married, their particular quantum level might not be at a level where their the tribes they were raised in would allow them to be a citizen. So we run into that kind of issue. And then on the other is that, my ancestors may able to be recognized because they signed some papers. They signed what's called the Dawes Rolls back there in the late 1890s, early 1900s. Some Native ancestors did not sign those kinds of documents. And so even though they were born and raised with the natives on the reservation and that, because they don't have those documents, they're not recognized either. So there's there's a percentage out there that we would hope would go for some additional review or investigation to allow them to participate, even though some of those documents are not there. But within the community and with the tribes, they've been there throughout all of their lives and go back many years to the reservation, and sometimes it skips a generation too. So it's kind of a gray area in there that could be addressed, and that would help out many of the true natives who need the assistance and recognition going forward.
So I have a third question but I'm going to open up and let Patricia jump in, because you gave me another question to think about, So, but I'm going to jump right in, Patricia.
No, that's fine. Go ahead with your question. I think we shared some of the questions, so go for it. Thank you.
So my question is for folks who are, and thank you for bringing up the ways in which being a person of color, being an Indigenous person can actually be something that someone corrupts to get for profit and for access to resources that actually are being designated for folks who have faced centuries of oppression, right? And so thank you for mentioning the way that's been weaponized, quite honestly. And so, but I'm curious to know, for those who actually really do need the support, what does support look like? Is there financial support, institutional support, organizational support for folks who are trying to have themselves, documented as actual American Indians, and not be, someone misusing that national designation for profit?
Yes, absolutely. I think a couple of ways, because we are always excited. I'm very pleased when somebody comes up to me and said, yes, I have Indian blood, and can you tell me more? From one side, I did say there is a paper on our website, the nacc-il.org, that gives you guidance as to how to determine how to follow up if you indeed are Native American. This is also available on the BIA website too, so that you have steps that you can go through in an attempt to make that particular determination. And then within Illinois itself, we are part of what's called the Chicago American Indian Community Collaborative, the CAICC, or CAIC as we show it, as we term it. And that's made up of almost 20 separate Native organizations here in Chicago and in all of Illinois that represent a broad range of services and support. Like, for example, we are with the Native American Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, we focus on the entrepreneur. We have other museums that are there. American Indian Health Services is a part. So if you are Native, you're able to take advantage of some of those services that are there to help your health. Museums, we have an employment office. It's called the CIMC, the California Indian Manpower Consortium. We have full-time permanent people here in Illinois. The California part's on it just because they manage it out of there. So it is quite a broad range. So for health services, for employment, for building your business, for cultural activities, the American Indian Center of Chicago, the oldest functioning, continuing operating American Indian Center in the U.S. is a part of it and can provide a lot of other cultural and social service assistance to individuals too. So I would suggest going to that site. You can see many of the different organizations and then follow up with any of those that might be of particular interest to you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry that I went down that rabbit hole around demographics. I know that your primary focus of your talk with us today is around employment, and I do want to make sure we bring ourselves back to that, center. So I want to, open it back up for questions. And Patricia, I'm going to toss it to you, and I have an employment-based question I'll ask at the end.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Andrew, for the information that you provide us in gold weight. So one of the questions we have through CMS is we have monthly conversations with over 50 agencies. And one of the constant questions that we have from agency recruiters is, where are the hubs of communities under this identity XYZ, where we can come build relationships without interfering, without coming in to take notes of how culture works necessarily, right? But to serve as a partner in promoting opportunities for state employment. So I've noted definitely some of the organizations that we have already partnered with. Are there any perhaps that you would suggest our agencies to reach out to? And I'm thinking also, outside of the extended Chicago area, right? We have positions across the state, and so we want to make sure that we are as equitably reaching out to the different areas where possible. So any recommendations you may have there?
Absolutely. I think in a couple of ways. One is with some of the national Native publications, Indian Country Today, Native News, that they can help and target particular areas for you. They can target Illinois in terms of their advertising and outreach. Another part is with our celebrations. We call them powwows. So we're kind of coming to the end of our powwow season right now, but we're able to do that post-COVID And it is a tremendous celebration of our culture, our peoples. And that's one of the great things, I think, of having so many different tribes represented here. You're able to see their regalia, their practices, their particular kinds of dancing. And it is attended. We're looking for the latest one here coming up to be attended by literally thousands of people. And so so that is an area where you can reach out and see more of the general population, more of the people there. You know, it's something with Illinois, because almost every other group has a centering, a bulk of their population. With Native Americans, we kind of used to, as we talked about relocation, the bus terminus was downtown. People would get off and then kind of go north. So up in that Ravenswood area, the American Indian Center's up there in Albany Park. So there used to be quite a community there, a congregation, but the neighborhood gentrified. And unfortunately, many of the people could not remain in that area. And so we're very, very much spread out throughout Chicago and the suburbs and the state itself too. So it's a little hard to go to one individual community, but I think in working with the different organizations, that's kind of centrality can be found, and then we'll use our methods to get the word out too for that.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Well, I thank you all again so much for joining us today. I want to thank anyone who has taken the time to view this recording, whether it be during Indigenous Peoples Day or it be in December or next year, to be educated and to be able to be in a position to contribute to the work. So I'd like to thank you all again for being here with us. Please continue to follow our LinkedIn page at the Illinois Department of Central Management Services, learn about the Native American Chamber of Commerce of Illinois, learning about the amazing work that the governor's office is doing under the direction of Dr. Nzinga, and just stay connected, and please feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions or amazing ideas. So again, happy Indigenous Peoples Day, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.